The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, President Trump announcing that he is going to sign an executive order to make sure that TSA is paid so they can go back to work, so they don't have to sleep in their cars, so they don't have to sell their plasma, so they could feed their families, and so they could be focused at work. Bravo, bravo, bravo. President Trump doing this as the Democrats were showing no sign that they were going to end the funding shutdown over the Department of Homeland Security. And Congress was about to go on a 2-week break, a paid vacation for 2 weeks. So the Democrats were willing to continue this. Even if you see the lines at the airport, 6-8 hours, didn't seem to bother the Democrats. Shame on them. And so President Trump said, you know what, it is time. I'm going to make sure that they are indeed paid, putting out a statement just a little bit ago on Truth Social saying, quote, because the Democrats have recklessly created a true national crisis, I'm using my authorities under the law to protect our country as I always do. And earlier today, he was asked about the ICE agents that are at the airport. And this is what he said, defending the brave men and women of ICE.
Two illegal immigrants who were arrested at San Francisco airport for ignoring deportation orders. At the same time, as you highlighted, really great reception from American travelers for ICE agents. Is there a PR aspect of this that can allow future deportations to go on with less protesting, less outrage?
Yeah, it's amazing because by putting ICE there, look, the press was very unfair to ICE. So was everyone else. These are great American patriots. They have a tough job. They have to find murderers and take them out of our country. I wouldn't want to do it. You wouldn't want to do it. Most people wouldn't want to do it. They do it. And, 11,888 murderers, and that's murderers. That's not drug dealers. That's not lots of other things. It's not people from mental institutions. Entire jail populations were released from major countries and let into our country through the open border. And ICE has done an amazing job. I wouldn't want that job. It's a tough job, dangerous job. So what happens is by putting them at the airport, and I just say, do me a favor, take off your masks. And they did. For that. Not for when they're looking for some, cold-blooded killers and they're in the, but for that. And they did. They took them off. And the passengers, I see the interviews of people, they're saying, these are nice people. One person said, he's a very strong man, but he's a nice guy. He grabbed my bag. He helped a woman with a bag that she couldn't lift. And I'll tell you, I don't want to use the word rehab because there was nothing to rehab, but rehab from the press, because the press is so tough on them. And these crooks in Minnesota, these crooked politicians and dirty cops. They're dirty cops, they're dirty politicians. Waltz is a dirty, crooked politician.
And he's talking about Tim Walz. So guess what? I was watching some of the media, some of the mainstream media reacting to this news that President Trump is doing this emergency order. And what did they say? Why didn't he do it sooner? This is such Trump derangement syndrome, as opposed to saying, oh, this is a great thing to do to get the economy going, to get the lines going at the airport so people don't have to wait in line for 6-8 hours plus. Some of the airports have like a 50% call out rate for TSA. And yet the mainstream media won't even compliment Trump. It is all about bashing Trump and saying he should have done it sooner, that he should have done this process a lot earlier. What a bunch of hogwash and how ridiculous. They will never appreciate President Trump. They would essentially give him a critique if he tried to solve cancer. They would say, oh, you're putting the pharmaceutical business, in danger. This is so preposterous, but bravo to President Trump, because the Democrats were holding America and the American flying public hostage. So where does it all go from here? Well, joining us now is Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis from the great state of New York. Congresswoman, it's so great to have you. Give us your reaction, because you probably heard in the last few hours, President Trump came out and announced that he is going to sign this emergency order that will at least allow TSA to get paid. Thank goodness, right?
Yeah, look, this is tremendous news, both for the TSA agents and the travelers. I mean, these long lines have been really inconvenient for Americans trying to just get to where they need to go. And quite frankly, President Trump took this type of leadership and decisive action during the last shutdown that was caused by Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, when he moved funding around to be able to pay our military men and women. So this is good news. This is a real step in the right direction. The problem is we still need the Democrats to come to the table and fund Homeland Security. I mean, we are in a situation here. It's the 25th anniversary of September 11th. We have the World Cup, you have the Olympics, you have all the America 250 events that are taking place. We are in a conflict with Iran. The Iranians have in the past made threats to attempt to assassinate our president, to cause harm on our soil. And we need to know who is coming in and out of our country. We need counterintelligence and cybersecurity to be fully funded, as well as we need to make sure that, ICE is deporting criminals and those people who are trying to do us harm. And so the reality is that this is great for the TSA agents. It's great for the travelers. But we still need to fund our Department of Homeland Security. And quite frankly, two New Yorkers, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, should know that more than anyone else.
You talked about DHS. What's the timetable now? I mean, Congress goes on, break tomorrow, right? So do you think anything's going to change with the other departments, with the DHS overall by tomorrow? Or do you think TSA gets funded and nothing happens in between for the next 2 weeks? What's sort of the estimate?
Well, look, House Republicans voted twice to fund Department of Homeland Security, actually 3 times now, to fund Homeland Security. This fight is really between the Senate and the White House, because Chuck Schumer needs to deliver 7 votes in the Senate to give the 60 that are necessary to pass any type of funding legislation. So, we're kind of on standby. We're waiting. We're happy to stay. We're happy to come back. But we need the Senate to make this type of agreement with the White House on what they're going to do. I mean, the fact that Hakeem Jeffries, he voted against it. He whipped his caucus to vote against it in the House, but we still had the votes, so we managed to pass it. The thing is, Chuck Schumer's not delivering those 7 votes in the Senate. And so what happens is, you have a New York senator who is the minority leader, who has control because he needs to give those 7 votes in order for any financial bill to be passed in terms of funding our government. I mean, what just happened? We saw an 83-year-old man, a veteran, killed, being thrown in the subway tracks by an illegal immigrant. You saw a New Jersey resident being killed by a drunk driver here, also illegally. You saw this woman in Chicago being shot in the head by an illegal immigrant. All this stuff happened in the last week or so. And you still have them saying, we're going to hold up funding Department of Homeland Security because we don't want to fund ICE. We don't want to fund ICE. They're saying they don't want to fund ICE. They don't want to fund Border Patrol. They don't even want to know who's coming in and out of our country at a time when we know that there are terrorists attempting to do us harm. And, look, we've caught hundreds of terrorists at our border during the Biden administration. Thankfully, we caught them. But what about the millions of gotaways that came into our country? We don't know who they are, where they are, what their intentions are. Why would you not want to fund these critical Department of Homeland Security agencies? To me, it's shocking that a New York member of all, knowing what happened on September 11th, would not want to fund our Department of Homeland Security and would play this game even after the head of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, was removed, which was something that I actually said should have been done, that she should have been replaced. And I was very out front about that. They de-escalated ICE tactics. They made a lot of different changes to the agency, and still these guys do not want to Homeland Security. To me, that's unconscionable.
Yeah, it's like there's no negotiating, it seems. We talked with Congressman Mike Lawler earlier today, Congresswoman Malliotakis, and he had some very choice words for Chuck Schumer in particular, calling him an SOB. What do you think?
Well, it was interesting. Mike Lawler and I were actually in a meeting today with Chuck Schumer, and it was related to the MTA, actually. But during that meeting, Mike and I did go after Chuck Schumer on this, and we said, you need to fund Homeland Security. You need to fund Homeland Security, bottom line. And the fact that the reason you don't want to fund Homeland Security is because of ICE and Customs and Border Protection, when you just saw multiple Americans killed by people who are here illegally. To me, it makes absolutely no sense. So we did go after Chuck Schumer in that meeting. It was a private meeting, but we did go after him on that. We pressed him on that. We told him to fund Homeland Security. It's ludicrous. And again, two New Yorkers, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, of all people, should know at least how critical Homeland Security is. This is an agency that was created after the September 11th attacks. And we're not funding them really during this important year when there's so many events critical that are going to be crowded events that are for America's anniversary, for the 9/11 anniversary, the World Cup, all these events that are happening. And they're not going to fund Homeland Security because they want to continue to just allow people into this country illegally and not deport criminals. Now, I agree with some of the tactics that were used. We've seen the de-escalation. We've seen the head of Homeland Security changed. Those are significant steps. And to hold up Homeland Security at this point is just, I think, ridiculous.
It is.
Frankly.
I think it's unconscionable. I agree.
It's unconscionable. And you know what? I really hope nothing happens. I mean, because honestly, New York City still continues to be a top terror threat. It's why I went up against Kristi Noem and Homeland Security when they tried to cut $100 million from the NYPD for counterterrorism, because they did some new formula that wanted to punish sanctuary cities. Now, obviously, I don't agree with New York City's sanctuary policy, but we need to support our NYPD, and I pushed back on that. And with the help of President Trump, we overrode what DHS did at that time. We got the $100 million for our NYPD, for counterterrorism. It's critically important. So I'm willing to go up against my own party if need be. When it comes to these issues, they're that critical. But I don't see why Chuck Schumer's not doing the same thing and standing up to the radical left and saying this is what's in the best interest of public safety and national security.
Yeah, it seems like they're all kind of folding in line with this radical policy, and Chuck Schumer seems to be leaving his spine behind. Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, before we let you go, you got a shout out from the president tonight at the Greek Independence Day event. Were you there? And of course, our owner-operator, John Katzimatidis, and our dear friend, he was there, and Margot was there. Fill us in. Were you there at the event, and what did you think?
Yeah, it was a beautiful event. Look, obviously, the United States and Greece have so many values that we share. Democracy being the priority. And John was there and Margot were there, and they were on stage front and center, and the president honored them and recognized them. I was proud to be there as a Greek American in Congress. And, I guess the question I have for the president is, who is the bigger movie star? Is it Melania Trump or is it John Katzimatidis?
Yeah, that's right. From his big role in Marty Supreme. I mean, my favorite line was, Nicole, he said, when President Trump brought John up, and you and I, obviously, we've known John for so many years. John said, we used to compete against each other. And then he looked at him and he said, and you won.
You know what? That is right. That's funny. And, John, I think, I think he's a little sore about not getting an Oscar still, And so congratulations on your Gracie Award. But, John kind of deserved an Oscar there, And we all love John. And Marty Supreme was a great movie. I happen to be a ping pong, table tennis, just tennis in general fan. So people who did not see Marty Supreme, they should definitely check it out. And you'll see John Katzimatidis in there. We're all so proud of him as Greek Americans just to see him in that role. And I'm sorry he didn't win the Oscar, but I think he's a little sad about that.
Well, you know what? Maybe next year he'll be the lead actor. He was so great in the movie, and I loved seeing him in it. And I loved seeing John and Margot up there on the stage, so beautifully honored. A beautiful shout out to WABC. And the two, you could just tell there's just a beautiful relationship there. It was so special to see that.
Look, we're all New Yorkers at the end of the day. We love New York City and we want to see it safe. And of course, John is the biggest promoter of common sense policies for our city.
He is Mr. Common Sense. That's why you and I love him so much. Nicole, thank you so much. And congrats on the nice shout out too, also for you from the president too. Thanks so much, Nicole. And listen, let's hope the Democrats get some of John's common sense and start doing funding for DHS. Nicole Malliotakis, thank you. The great Congresswoman here from New York. Thank you.
Have a great night. Thanks.
You too. Thank you so much. And thank you for the sweet words too, Nicole. Thank you. And everybody, I'll take your calls when we come back. 1-800-848-9222. And you're listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Tap the banner to learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, thank goodness President Trump said no more, that funding for TSA workers is going to be coming because they deserve to be paid. And the American public is fed up with waiting in lines. Also today, I couldn't believe this, Brandon Johnson, who's the mayor of Chicago, came out and he essentially said it doesn't matter that this death happened of this lovely young woman in his area, the woman who's originally from Westchester. That doesn't matter. He said, you know what, we're going to stay focused on supporting all communities. What is he talking about? I mean, how tone deaf is this guy? 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Liz in Florida on line 4. Go ahead, Liz, your thoughts.
Hi, Rita. So I think if Congress is holding up the TSA agents' ability to make money to support themselves and their families, then they should also not get paid until everything is sorted out. And I think that if they come into office, Congress, with a certain salary and end up a year or so later with millions and they can't explain that surge, they should be removed from office and investigated. And if they find that they did wrong, use that money stolen to give to the TSA agents as a raise.
Oh, Liz, you always have some great creative ideas. I like that. Take it from there, give it to them. I'm glad to hear that it looks like the TSA workers are going to be paid. That's been horrible what the Democrats have done.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Wythe County, Virginia, where a state police trooper and a sheriff's deputy rescued a driver from a burning vehicle. The state police responded to a crash in the southbound lanes on the interstate, and the authorities reported that a driver of a commercial motor vehicle was traveling southbound and slowing for traffic in the left lane when it was struck by a driver of a van. And the impact caused the van to catch on fire. Now, when they got on the scene, the law enforcement folks immediately ran over to the burning van. They quickly assessed the situation, and they worked to extract the driver out of the van to safety. Thankfully, the officers were able to get that driver out. The driver was semi-conscious, and they dragged him away from the burning vehicle just seconds before it exploded. The driver sustained serious but not life-threatening injuries and was thankful to be alive thanks to the fast action of our men and women in blue. Well, as we said, the big news tonight is that President Trump says that the TSA workers at the airport can now rest easy, and their families. It's been disgusting what the Democrats have done now for weeks upon weeks. Today's day 41. And President Trump said he will find money and make sure that they get paid through emergency funds so they can stay on the job and the lines can go a lot more smoothly at the airport. I think it's been disgraceful what the Democrats have done. And I think the Republicans for sure should be out there telling everybody what happened and how atrocious and how horrible this situation is. And who's to blame? The Democrats. They're the ones holding it up. So earlier today, I wanted to play this because earlier today we talked to Congressman Mike Lawler, and he was in that meeting with Nicole Malliotakis and Chuck Schumer. And boy, Mike Lawler had some very choice words for Chuck Schumer. Listen to this.
And so many of my Democratic colleagues have joined Republicans in saying for decades that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, that Iran is the greatest state sponsor of terrorism, and yet just 2 weeks ago, 53 Democrats voted against a resolution saying as much. And here today, voting again to keep the Department of Homeland Security shut down at a time of enhanced threats, at a time in which, we've had 4 terrorist attacks, at a time in which illegal immigrants are killing innocent Americans. An 18-year-old girl from my district, Sheridan Gorman, brutally murdered in Chicago. At Loyola University, Chicago, and then an 83-year-old Air Force veteran pushed in front of an oncoming subway car, killed by an illegal immigrant. And Chuck Schumer has the audacity in this moment to keep the government shut down because he doesn't want our immigration laws enforced. It is disgraceful. It is pathetic. It is unbecoming. And after 50 plus years in elected office, that son of a bitch needs to go. It is outrageous what he has done in this country.
Calling him an SOB. And you heard from Nicole Malliotakis. She was there too. The fact that the Democrats, we'll see, they should pay a dear political price for the fact that they have held up the American public and held the American transportation system hostage. And so far, as you heard, it's not like the Department of Homeland Security is funded. President Trump is finding the funds somewhere else to pay TSA. Thank goodness he is doing that. The other big news tonight, and it's a busy night, President Trump puts out a tweet saying he's going to extend the deadline on Iran. Tomorrow was supposed to be the deadline. And then he said, I'm going to give Iran 10 more days before we could potentially knock out their power grid. I'm going to give them 10 more days to negotiate. So do you think this is genuine, or do you think it's a bit of a bluff, a bit of a deflection for President Trump? Maybe saying that they rest on their laurels and then the 82nd Airborne goes in. Here is President Trump earlier today talking about this new deal, this new 10-day extension.
You just put out on Truth Social that you will be pausing energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern time because the negotiations are going very well. I would never ask you to reveal to the public specifics, but could you broadly characterize where we are at?
Well, the Iranians asked me to do that, and I was not happy with them because I made a statement that we're having productive negotiations. I don't know that they get there. Maybe they do. Maybe they won't. I mean, look, in a certain sense, we've already won because we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, completely knocked out their Air Force, just about completely knocked out. We knocked out 154 ships, and pretty good ships. In fact, I said, why don't we just take them instead of sinking them? We could have used them ourselves, right? But they like showing how tough they are. They like them at the bottom of the sea probably a little bit better. But think of it. We knocked out their Navy. We knocked out their Air Force. We knocked out most of their missiles. They're down to about 9%. We knocked out their missile launchers, which is a big deal because without the missile launchers, the missiles don't do very well. You can't go to your window and say, let's throw a missile out of the air. And we knocked out all of their communications, their telecommunications, and very importantly, we knocked out their anti-aircraft apparatus, which was very good, but it didn't last long because we hit it the second night, and we're just free flying right over the middle of Tehran, do whatever we want. And one other thing we knocked out was their leaders. So we knocked out the supreme leader, as they called him, Khomeini. They then named another one. We knocked them out, and we knocked out part of the third group, and we're just holding for the rest. We know where they all are. And it's one country that does not want to be, you have very few people want to be the leader. You know, everyone wants to be president of the United States. Everyone wants to be president or whatever, prime minister of a certain country. There are not a lot of takers to be the head of Iran right now. I will tell you, they're all fighting not to. We don't want that position. But they asked me if they would, Kaylee, importantly, they said to me, very nicely, through my people, could we have more time? Because we're talking about tomorrow night, which is pretty quick. And if they don't do what they have to do, I will knock out their power plants. So he said, does that include nuclear? Because they have nuclear, you know, plenty of money. They have a lot of money, and they built nuclear and they built regular power plants, but they're massive and very expensive, billions of dollars. And so I gave them a 10-day period. They asked for 7. You're going to say, oh, Trump's a terrible negotiator. They asked for 7, and I said, I'm going to give you 10 because they gave me ships. We talked about the 8 ships, you know, the president that I talked about the other day. But they asked for 7, and I gave them 10. You got 10 days, and they were very thankful about that. Now, they may say, oh, we're not speaking. I don't like that because that wasn't true the last time, as you found out. But we are speaking, and it's going fairly well, and so I gave them 10 days.
I love that President Trump said, oh, you're going to say I'm not a good negotiator because I gave them more time as opposed to giving them less. But that is classic Trump. So my theory, guys, is maybe some of this is a deflection. Maybe that's the sense that Iran can sort of rest on its laurels, think they have 10 days, trying to buy time. If President Trump believes that they genuinely are not doing anything appropriate, that they're not blatantly trying to make efforts to remove their nuclear material from this earth, if they're not making efforts to block, areas, and then on the flip side, open areas like the Strait of Hormuz, where those ships are still being stuck. If they're not doing these major steps, giving up nuclear production, ballistic missile production, a whole bunch of it, you guys, you can bet President Trump may not wait the 10 days. And he might even have something in store. Maybe this is a deflection. Maybe this is a bluff. And maybe he is planning on taking some action as early as this weekend. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. Let's go to Reggie in Texas on line 2. Go ahead, Reg. Your thoughts tonight.
Hey, Miss Rita, I wanted to chime in on that, on the whole TSA thing. I think in the meantime, I think what Donald Trump needs to do is I think he needs to employ the full power. I mentioned this a few days ago. I think he ought to bring in the ATF, the Secret Service, and even the U.S. Marshals to help out at that airport, at the airports. And now he's got some leverage to tell them, listen, you're threatening me with funding. I'm going to find a way to add more people to security here. You're not going to like what I see. And I think he also has a perfect opportunity. The ICE has gotten a bad rap, I think. And there was an ICE agent. I don't know if you saw the video. An ICE agent helped a one-year-old child was choking, and the ICE agent performed a Heimlich maneuver to save this young child's life. I think this is the perfect opportunity to bring this ICE agent to the White House and trumpet that. You had Jeffrey saying we're going to have ICE agents going to come in and kill people at the airport. No, you had one save a life. I think it's a great opportunity for the administration to do this.
I love that, by the way. I think that's a fantastic, mission to show, and maybe have a couple of them. Hey, I'm sure. And that case at JFK was a remarkable, just beautiful story. It was the father who was with his son. The son started choking. They were in line. The son was turning blue. And an ICE agent was there and rushed over, performed the Heimlich maneuver. And they actually, the father and the son actually were okay, and they made the flight. I mean, it's an amazing story. I think what he should do is just like you said, have that ICE agent, right? But have a whole bunch of other ICE agents too as well. I mean, that would be it. Make it an ICE celebration, because I'm sure there are other ICE agents who've done other really amazing things. Bring that one. Bring others and make it an ICE tribute award ceremony, because you're right. The American public needs to see that. And I think, as much as this has obviously been so horrible for travelers, the fact they've had to spend time with some ICE agents there at the airport, whether they wanted to or not, I think that's helped. I think it's helped because they're seeing that the lines are going more smoothly. They're helping out. They're nice people. They're qualified. They're smart. They're responsive. They're not prejudiced. They're not, killers like Hakeem Jeffries seems to allude to, or at least D.A. Krasner certainly does. They're not shooting up people like Hakeem Jeffries was alluding to. I mean, all of these crazy, crazy things. And hopefully maybe it's changed the impression. Maybe it's changed the whole perspective of these ICE agents. Maybe people are saying, oh, you know what? I actually came in contact with them and they're not so bad. It's like community policing. When you kind of get the police out into the neighborhoods, even some of the terrible skeptics and critics realize, wow, they're really nice people. They're really hardworking people who have families, who have responsibilities, who care about others. Same thing with ICE. So what do you think about that idea? Make it like a ICE award ceremony, Reggie.
Well, I love it. I think we might even, President Trump always has the wherewithal to sort of capture the moment. He can call it something like the new ice age or whatever he wants to call it. He's very good with that sort of thing. I think you brought up some great points, but down here in Texas, that's part of ingrained in our culture down here. We see ICE agents and Border Patrol. They're our neighbors, and we see them, and they're at restaurants, and they're at places we go. So to us, we already know their value in society, and it's a shame that once the bad thing goes out, it's like if you're a restaurant manager, you'll hear the complaint from the customer about the bad dish or whatever, but you won't have someone come and tell you how good the restaurant is. That's unfortunate with ICE too, because I think things are getting blown out of proportion.
Oh, 100%. Reggie, you know that the Democrats are just churning it up. I mean, they could look like Mother Teresa and they would say they're terrible. It's all politics. Don't you agree?
Oh, yes. And when you say, Miss Rita, that this whole case with the young girl, the 18-year-old, which is just a heartbreaking case, we all feel that there's nothing you could really, and the Democrats could really return some form of return to normalcy by just simply stating, look, this is horrible. This maybe we need to find a way to balance this out because, as you pointed out, 3 cases in this short period of time, and it really encompassed you have an 83-year-old man, veteran, pushed on the track, dies, an 18-year-old girl just starting her life, really, and then the hit-and-run person, I guess it was in New Jersey. All of these people were people that shouldn't have been in our country, one of them with four deportation orders. What exactly does ICE have to do with that? What's the negative attitude towards ICE?
Nothing. That's why none of it makes sense, Reggie. And you know that. They're just fabricating it to churn up anything that has to do with something that resembles Trump. They're going to go after. That's really what this is all about. This is I hate Trump, and anything attached to him or even noble, great missions like ICE, we're going to vilify them, just like they're doing with the police, just like they're doing with so many others. That's why we know it's just a bunch of bumkus. But they're just doing it because they're hoping somebody's going to buy it. If they keep hearing it long enough, and maybe they don't have the relationships like you and I do with ICE, where we see ICE and appreciate them, maybe they're hoping it's going to churn off onto somebody else, and then they can work against it because Trump was behind it. So Orange Man bad. I mean that is the only reason. This is all Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. Reggie, thank you very much. You're terrific. Everybody, we're going to continue your calls after the break here on The Rita Cosby Show. 1-800-848-9222.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And coming up on the Rita Cosby Show, we will talk about some of these crazy comments coming out of Chicago from J.B. Pritzker and also Mayor Brandon Johnson. Also, Trump gave a doozy of a cabinet meeting today. I think my favorite line was when President Trump said, you know what a day is in Trump time? Quote, it's an eternity. And he's right. Nobody packs in the day like President Trump. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Eduardo in Tampa on line 3. Go ahead, Eduardo.
Yeah, good evening, Rita. Well, speaking of Chicago, my former city, 400 teen takeover last night. Pretty ridiculous. Another stat of crime in that big city.
And Eduardo, before you go forward, I saw the images. It's like how many students or kids were involved in this? Like it's like this massive, it's like a mob scene, right?
Yeah. Well, they get on social media and they say, "Hey, we're going to be into downtown," and that's how it is with not just Chicago but other cities. And we had this ruling with social media. A lot of this, is a brainwashing for young people. And let me move forward here, getting back to ICE here. So I saw this in Spanish. So there were like 500 migrants near the border of Mexico and Guatemala. And so they started a caravan. They're going to Mexico City. Obviously, they're not going to the U.S. because Trump is in the presidency. So maybe if Biden was in office, they might have think otherwise and headed up further north.
I'm sure they would think otherwise, but go ahead. You're being very diplomatic, Eduardo. They'd bum rush it. They go, we're going.
Yeah. They were frustrated with paperwork and they wanted to look for employment opportunities. So they settled with Mexico City. So semi-good news with that.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. That is true. Now, what do you make of the fact that ICE is being so horribly vilified? Like this guy, Larry Krasner, in Philly.
You read my mind. I was just going to get into that. Yeah, pretty ridiculous. I mean, just like in Chicago and L.A. and all that, you got these DAs. Like over there in L.A., they got, I think it's Bonta. That's his last name. Same thing. He vilifies ICE. Pretty ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking about. And
beyond vilify, says that they're going to arrest them.
Arrest them.
I mean,
right.
That's a remarkable statement from a sitting district attorney and others, too, like you're talking about, because for them to come out and say it, and this is the same guy who called them Gestapo, who called them Nazis. It's like I don't know. Is he trying to get like the Lunatic of the Year award? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm wondering if they were texting with the alderman from Rogers Park, Maria Hayden.
The woman who said that Sheridan Gorman was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
I mean, what an insensitive, disgusting comment, right?
Ridiculous. Yeah.
So what's going on with these people that's where they're coming from? I mean, did you ever imagine that you would have people out there that said, oh, yes, we should arrest ICE. We should not worry about the community. We should make sure that we just support essentially illegal immigrants. I mean, I couldn't believe the callousness of Brandon Johnson today in that particular case. He just said, you know what? It doesn't matter. You know what? We have to focus on our mission as he stood in front of an anti-ICE truck, Eduardo.
Yeah. And now they're feeling pretty good after the results from Tuesday. This Saturday, they're going to have the National Kings that's going to return. So that's going to be another Woodstock moment for the Democrats.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? The King's Day, this was planned before. But where were these protesters protesting for the Iranian people who were begging for their freedom as they were being mowed down by the regime? They were busy.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.